is nice. Presence is better. When the ark came home, David didn't protect his optics, he protected his awe. Let's talk about the kind of worship that tells pride to take a seat. I'm Misty Green, and this is the I Lead Misty Blue podcast, where strategy meets soul and faith finds its voice. We continue our journey through divine encounters, walking through 1st and 2nd Samuel, where every meeting with God, whether comfortable or difficult, becomes a necessary part of the destiny He is forming. From Hannah's surrendered prayer to Samuel's awakening, from Saul's crown to David's cave, we've seen how obedience and courage and even betrayal and humility shape leaders who are after God's heart. If you're joining mid-series, I invite you to go back and sit with those earlier conversations. Each one is a mirror of how God still longs to meet us today. Now we step into episode 8, Dancing in Linen When Worship Breaks Dignity. This is a story about presence that returned, reverence that was restored, and pride that had to sit down. David gathered 30,000 men to bring the Ark of the Covenant home to Jerusalem, the symbol of God's presence, the very place where he chose to dwell among his people. But this holy moment was handled in an extremely human way. Instead of carrying the ark on the shoulders of the priest as God had commanded, they set it on a new cart, a borrowed method from the Philistines. What looked efficient was actually irreverent. As they traveled, the oxen stumbled at the threshing floor of Nacon, and Uzzah instinctively reached out to steady the ark. And what happened? In an instant, he fell dead. Scripture records David was angry because the Lord's wrath had broken out against Uzzah. That verse stopped me in my tracks because I don't find many places where David was angry with God. But here he was. He was hurt. He was confused. He was human. He had done something good in his heart, but out of order in his hands. And where did it happen? Let's be real. Here it is again, at the threshing floor. If you remember our conversation from Process is the Path to Your Purpose, you know that the threshing floor is never random. It's the place where things are separated, where the weight of the wheat is beaten to release what's pure from what cannot continue. It's where destiny is decided through distinction. This was a divine encounter, one that tested David's understanding of God's holiness. He had to learn that the presence of God cannot be carried on man-made methods or borrowed traditions. And in David's anger, we see not rebellion, but we see tension. We see analysis. We see wrestling. We see a leader confronting the mystery of God's ways. And sometimes God's correction feels like loss, but it's actually an invitation to remember who God is and how God moves. For 3 months, the ark remained in the house of Obed, and everything he had was blessed. When David heard this, his anger turned to awe. He realized the presence wasn't the problem. His approach was. So when he set out to bring the ark back again, it was different this time. The priests were consecrated. The offerings were made, and the pace was slower. And every 6th step, David stopped to sacrifice and to worship. The difference between the first and the second attempt, it wasn't zeal, it was order. God's presence moves through alignment, not ambition. Excellence without reverence, it's just entertainment, and God will never reduce his presence to a performance. David was learning painfully and beautifully that obedience is the bridge between intention and encounter. As the ark entered the city of David, scripture says he danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a linen ephod. The king, who once hid in caves, now spun freely in the streets. The one who had been chased was now chosen, and he knew who to thank. But not everyone understood his joy. From the window, who's watching? Saul's daughter Michal, and she despised David in her heart. When he came home, she didn't greet him with love, she mocked him. How the king of Israel has distinguished himself today. It's no accident that she was Saul's daughter. The same pride that cost her father the kingdom was now trying to silence her husband's worship. And Michal had a royal view of God, one that valued dignity over devotion. And scripture says, because of her contempt, she remained childless. Contempt closes what God intends to birth. When we judge someone else's freedom, we forfeit our own. When we curse the lesson, we forfeit the purpose. David wasn't dancing for applause. He was dancing for awe. He wasn't showing off. He was showing honor to God. Every single person in this chapter had a divine encounter with the presence. Uzzah, he tried to control it. Obed, he hosted it. David celebrated it. But Michal criticized it. And the presence of God doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've become. For David, this moment was redemption, the proof he had learned from his own anger and returned with a holy posture. For Michal, it was exposure, the moment her heart chose pride over presence. Divine encounters always invite response to worship, to wonder, or to withdrawal. How we respond determines what God can birth next. Excellence means doing things well. Reverence means doing them with awe. When we combine the two, joy outlasts judgment. We can't carry the presence on new carts of convenience and expect the old power to flow. Holiness has an order. And the first place God reclaims it, that is the heart. Ask yourself, where am I performing instead of worshiping? Where am I guarding my dignity more than my devotion? Write it down, pray it through, and be purposeful about it. Let humility make room for God's presence, because when the presence returns, pride has to sit down. Every divine encounter has purpose. Some teach us, some test us, and some they transform us. But all draw us closer to the heart of God. And even in the places that hurt, He's still separating what must remain from what we must release. That's the beauty of the threshing floor. It's where purpose is purified and the next chapter begins. If this episode reminded you of the purpose of divine encounters and caused you to think about how your posture is met when you're in such an environment, I invite you to do 3 things. Share this episode with someone who needs encouragement in their own process. Like the podcast so others can find the conversations. And leave a comment or a review letting me know what part of this message spoke to you. Your voice truly matters here. Pull up a chair. The table is always set.